The History of Sexuality, Volume 1, An Introduction, by Michel Foucault. Part 4. The Deployment of Sexuality. The aim of this series of studies? To transcribe into history the fable of Les Bijoux Indiscrets. Among its many emblems, our society wears that of the talking sex. The sex which one catches unawares and questions, and which, restrained and loquacious at the same time, endlessly replies. One day a certain mechanism, which was so elfin-like that it could make itself invisible, captured this sex, and, in a game that combined pleasure with compulsion and consent with inquisition, made it tell the truth about itself and others as well. For many years we have all been living in the realm of Prince Mangogol, under the spell of an immense curiosity about sex, bent on questioning it, with an insatiable desire to hear it speak and be spoken about, quick to invent all sorts of magical rings that might force it to abandon its discretion. As if it were essential for us to be able to draw from that little piece of ourselves not only pleasure but knowledge, and a whole subtle interchange from one to the other, a knowledge of pleasure, a pleasure that comes of knowing pleasure, a knowledge pleasure, and as if that fantastic animal we accommodate had itself such finely tuned ears, such searching eyes, so gifted a tongue and mind, as to know much and be quite willing to tell it, provided we employed a little skill in urging it to speak. Between each of us and our sex, the West has placed a never-ending demand for truth. It is up to us to extract the truth of sex, since this truth is beyond its grasp. It is up to sex to tell us our truth, since sex is what holds it in darkness. But is sex hidden from us, concealed by a new sense of decency, kept under a bushel by the grim necessities of bourgeois society? On the contrary, it shines forth, it is incandescent. Several centuries ago it was placed at the center of a formidable petition to know. A double petition, in that we are compelled to know how things are with it, while it is suspected of knowing how things are with us. In the space of a few centuries, a certain inclination has led us to direct the question of what we are to sex. Not so much to sex as representing nature, but to sex as history, as signification and discourse. We have placed ourselves under the sign of sex, but in the form of a logic of sex rather than a physics. We must make no mistake here. With the great series of binary oppositions, body, soul, flesh, spirit, instinct, reason, drives, consciousness, that seemed to refer sex to a pure mechanics devoid of reason, the West has managed not only, or not so much, to annex sex to a field of rationality, which would not be all that remarkable an achievement, seeing how accustomed we are to such conquests since the Greeks, but to bring us almost entirely, our bodies, our minds, our individuality, our history, under the sway of a logic of concupiscence and desire. Whenever it is a question of knowing who we are, it is this logic that henceforth serves as our master key. It has been several decades since geneticists ceased to conceive of life as an organization strangely equipped with an additional capacity to reproduce itself. They see in the reproductive mechanism that very element which introduces the biological dimension, the matrix not only of the living but of life itself. But it was centuries ago that countless theoreticians and practitioners of the flesh, whose approach was hardly scientific, it is true, made man the offspring of an imperious and intelligible sex. Sex, the explanation for everything. It is pointless to ask, why then is sex so secret? What is this force that so long reduced it to silence and has only recently relaxed its hold somewhat, allowing us to question it perhaps, but always in the context of and through its repression? In reality, this question, so often repeated nowadays, is but the recent form of a considerable affirmation and a secular prescription. There is where the truth is. Go see if you can uncover it. Acheronto movebo, an age-old decision. Ye wise men, highly, deeply learned, who think it out and know, how, when, and where do all things pair? Why do they kiss and love? Ye men of lofty wisdom, say, what happened to me then? Search out and tell me where, how, when, and why it happened thus. It is reasonable, therefore, to ask first of all, what is this injunction? Why this great chase after the truth of sex, the truth in sex? In Diderot's tale, the good genie Cucufa discovers at the bottom of his pocket, in the midst of worthless things, consecrated seeds, little pagodas made of lead, and mouldy sugar-coated pills, the tiny silver ring whose stone, when turned, makes the sexes one encounters speak. He gives it to the curious sultan. Our problem is to know what marvellous ring confers a similar power on us, and on which master's finger it has been placed, what game of power it makes possible or presupposes, and how it is that each one of us has become a sort of attentive and imprudent sultan with respect to his own sex and that of others. It is this magical ring, this jewel, which is so indiscreet when it comes to making others speak, but so ineloquent concerning one's own mechanism, that we need to render loquacious in its turn. It is what we have to talk about. We must write the history of this will to truth, this petition to know that for so many centuries has kept us enthralled by sex, the history of a stubborn and relentless effort. What is it that we demand of sex, beyond its possible pleasures, that makes us so persistent? What is this patience or eagerness to constitute it as the secret, the omnipotent cause, the hidden meaning, the unremitting fear? And why was the task of discovering this difficult truth finally turned into an invitation to eliminate taboos and break free of what binds us? Was the labor then so arduous that it had to be enchanted by this promise? Or had this knowledge become so costly, in political, economic, and ethical terms, that in order to subject every one to its rule, it was necessary to assure them, paradoxically, that their liberation was at stake? In order to situate the investigations that will follow, let me put forward some general propositions concerning the objective, the method, the domain to be covered, and the periodizations that one can accept in a provisory way.